This talk was given by Roshi Martin, guiding teacher of the Endless Path Zendo, a lay Buddhist community in Rochester, New York. Join our practice, in person or online, at endlesspathzendo.org.
So today is Saturday, September 27th, 2025. We're reopening the Zendo after a bit of a hiatus where Rose and I were off visiting family. Our daughter had an artist has had a show in New Orleans, and then we all went up to visit our son and daughter-in-law and grandson for our grandson's first birthday, which was actually yesterday, but we went a week early in Northern California. And it was a great trip. It was really wonderful to connect. And it's great to be back. I'm really glad we can be here and doing this. So before we start reading our 70th year for Hanshan, the wonderful Ming Dynasty Zen teacher, just a little bit to get us back in the mood, so to speak. The great Tibetan poet saint Milarepa, I believe 12th century. If you don't know the life story of Milarepa, which was written maybe in the 14th century, it's really one of the great classics of Buddhist literature and is a great story, full of drama and complexity. If you don't know it and you're looking for a good book to read, I think the latest translation is in a Penguin paperback. Anyway, the great Tibetan poet and saint Milarepa said, if you think tomorrow is the time to practice, you'll find that your life has slipped away. Ever think on this and practice Dharma now. It doesn't mean we have to get overwrought or worked up or go run off someplace and do it. It means right now with this breath. Don't think, oh, I'll get serious about my practice tomorrow. Make it part of your life, just as you are. Dogen wrote, if you think you have something and it's enough, you don't really have it. When you feel that something's still missing, then you come close to the truth. Aiken Roshi used to say, not enough yet. Not yet enough. And classical Buddhism puts it like this. Even Shakyamuni Buddha himself is only halfway there. Even Shakyamuni Buddha himself is only halfway there. Now, just to bring it home a bit, we're each here for a very short time. That's the truth. And while we're here, we've been each handed an amazing mystery. And it's up to each one of us to resolve this mystery that we've been handed. And that mystery is, who am I? I mean, think about it. We go through our life, our day, our relationships, our job challenges, or whatever we're dealing with, our health issues. Who is having all these things? Who is dealing with all these things? Who is making all these decisions? Who am I? Right now, who sees color with the eyes? Who hears sounds with the ears? Who thinks? Who feels? Who has all these plans? It doesn't negate any of the plans or any of the thoughts. It's simply, who am I? It is a real great mystery. And in some ways, when you think about it, the detective novel is really the essence of literature. It's coming down to who done it, man? Who done it? That's the essence of our life for real. Who am I? And solving this mystery is the core reason for our being. It is why we are each here in this life. And in coming to a Zendo and practicing, we have each matured to the point of at least glimpsing this real challenge. Zen practice is a very fundamental way to work on resolving the mystery that resides at our very core. I love koan practice because I think it's truly an extraordinary path that helps us see into the mystery and helps us grow to handle it. But of course, koan practice isn't necessary to Zen practice. It's simply something that if you have a feeling for it, I just think it's great. But breath practice is the foundation of everything. Still, in passing koans, that's not really the point, is it? It's really who passes the koan. Who feels good when they pass the koan? Who feels bad when they get wrung out of the Doksan room? It all comes down, who's counting breath? Who's experiencing breath? Now, it doesn't mean to step out of your practice to look at it from the side with that question. It's just underneath it all, that mystery remains. Even Shakyamuni is only halfway there. So if we want to live in a better world, it's up to us to make it a better world by waking up to the real and to the actual world that we're all in. And this is something we negotiate breath by breath in our practice. This is the practice, and it means giving ourselves to it. I'm so glad we have a way of doing something about this. Looking right into this amazing mystery of who am I? Why am I here? Why was I born? Where am I going? And of course, Zazen, Doksan, Teisho, living by precepts are all ways of actualizing, engaging with this mystery. And Sesshin, if you can fit it into your schedule, is a particularly wonderful chance to devote ourselves to the essence of the practice and to do it along with others. But if you can't make it to Sesshin, and it's not possible for everyone to do so, we all have life circumstances that we have to attend to, then my recommendation is please try to sit extra when there's a session going on that you can't get to. Sit regularly, of course, but when there's a session on, see if you can manage to sit more than usual. There's a kind of energy in the air when session is going on, and you can kind of tune into it. And it'll strengthen and deepen not just your practice, but the decisions you make every day while that's going on and the way you experience things. So, with that as a foundation, let's take a look at Master Hanshan in his 70th year. Let's see what we got here. So, the 70th year, that was 1615 to 1616. It's coming kind of into our territory now. That spring, I gave lectures on my Shurangama Sutra commentary. In the summer, I rewrote my commentary called A Thorough Explanation of the Lotus Sutra. And after that, I lectured on the awakening of faith and wrote a commentary on it. I've mentioned that text before, and if you've never read it, I really recommend, if you have any kind of philosophical background or sense, it's The Awakening of Faith in the Mahayana is the complete title, and Hakada did, I think, at Columbia University, did a very good translation of it. That autumn, in the 8th month, I visited Nangui Mountain and climbed Zhuyong Peak during the Mid-Autumn Festival. On the 9th day of the 9th month, Upasaka, that means layman, lay practitioner, Feng Wan Cheng, who had been transferred from Wuling to the command of Hunan, invited me to visit Fangguang Temple with him. Inspector Wu Shengbai also came to see me to discuss my commentary on the Shurangama Sutra. He was so pleased with the manuscript that he and some of his subordinates donated money to have it printed. Additionally, he commissioned an artist to produce an illustrated album of 88 Buddhas. He asked me to write a tribute to each of these Buddhas, and I happily complied. After Upasaka Feng had settled into his new command, he invited me again to visit Juyi Mountain. In the 10th month, I arrived in the Lingling district where I stayed at Yuji for the winter. the 71st year, 1616 to 1617. In spring, in the first month, I returned to Hudong and learned that the body of Master Da Guan, my old Dharma friend, was going to be ceremonially cremated somewhere near the end of the year. Immediately after his death, Master Da Guan's body had been placed in a coffin which my disciple, Da Yi, had carried to Jingshan so that his disciples and fellow monks could pay their respects to him. 12 years had passed, and I had still not gone there to pay my own respects. With shame, I acknowledged I had not even sent incense or condolences. Now I learned of the impending cremation ceremony and the formal interment of the funerary urn. I decided that nothing would prevent me from attending the ceremony. Also in the spring, there was a succession ceremony at Huayu Temple, which I attended. I went to Meiji Hall, Meiju Hall, and paid my respects to Chan Master Shon On. That summer, in the fourth month, I arrived at Wuchang, where, after prostrating myself before the great statue of the Buddha, I visited Jue Feng. In the sixth month, I arrived at Zhuyang and visited Donglin Temple, where I wrote a poem in honor of the ancients. I then climbed Quanlu Mountain and paid my respects to late Master Kuehong. While staying on in the Jinju Plateau to get away from the summer heat, I wrote a commentary on Zhao Lun. I don't know what that is, I'm sorry. The scenery was so fantastically beautiful that I decided to think about building myself a little retirement home there. In the seventh month, I visited Guizhong and climbed Gold Wheel Peak, where, writing a poem to mark the occasion, I paid reverence to Sarira Stupa, Sarira Stupa sounds like a place where relics of the Buddha or some master had been put in a stupa. Usually Sarira means like the little residues when a master or the Buddha is cremated, the little bits that are left somehow glistening or something. So it sounds like, and it looks like part of the practice of monks and such at that time was also climbing up to peaks, climbing up mountains, and that's often where the stupas and the monasteries were located, out of the way, as it were. And it took some effort to get to them. It wasn't an easy stroll. Of course, when we were in Japan, we discovered that Hakuin's funky little temple was right on a main thoroughfare. Basically, you went down an alley off the Tokaido, which is now just a busy street, and walk from the train station and down a little alley, and there was Hakuin's funky little temple right there where at the time when he was there, there would have been crowds of people walking past the door. So China was a kind of different scene, though, of course, the big temples in Japan were built in beautiful and isolated places, like Eheju especially. But, there are also funky little places where good things happen. So I feel we're in that kind of tradition. We're in the funky little place tradition. In any case, at that time, a monk kindly offered me Wuyu Hall to use as a retreat. I went up to look at the place. Even though the hall was rather small, the scenery was spectacular, and I accepted his offer. A scholar named Jiang Lai Xi, who had been a disciple of Master Daguan, offered to donate money to finance my retirement there. Advisor Chen Qi Shi also came to visit me, and when he learned that I intended to retire there, he took a vow to act as Dharma protector. That autumn, in the eighth month, I left Guanshan Mountain, going to Wangmei, where I paid reverence to the fourth and fifth Chan patriarchs. I also went to Zhiyunshan and stayed there for 10 days so I could visit with Prefect Wang, who had kindly offered to build a vihara on Guangshan for me. Shan is mountain, so it's Guang Mountain. After leaving Prefect Wang, I went to Zhangcheng, where Wu Quan Wo and Wu Ben Ru also offered to build a temple for me if I wanted to retire there. Later, I visited Fushan and crossed the river to climb Juehua Mountain. A lot of mountain climbing, interestingly, a lot of walking, a lot of writing poetry. On the 15th day of the 11th month, I arrived at the Zhizhao Temple, and on the 19th day, I performed the funeral services for the cremation of Master Daguan's remains. In loving memory of him, I wrote a eulogy. On the 25th day, I personally put his ashes in an urn and supervised the placing of the urn in the Manjushri Tower. When we were at Jiaochu's monastery, Bailin, in China, there was a kind of mortuary tower for Jiaochu there. We did services outside that. So the temple is a kind of compound with a variety of buildings in it. Interesting that the ashes of this particular teacher were placed in the Manjushri Tower. In Master Daguan's honor, my disciple Fa Kai erected a stupa for which I wrote the memorial inscription. All I did was but a small measure of the loyalty I owed my true Dharma friend. I stayed on to pass the new year and wrote the importance of Chan practice for the monks there. Since Fa Kai had asked about the Dharma Lakshana teachings, I wrote the relationship of the noumenal and phenomenal. That's form, emptiness and form. The noumenal is emptiness. Form is the phenomenal. The relationship, form and emptiness and form. I answered all inquiries I received about the Dharma. I also wrote the song of the placard carrier. So here's the song of the placard carrier with a preface by Hanshan. Since the days when Dawi revived Linji's methods, Dawi was a great teacher, of course, in Linji, Rinzai's lineage, and transmitted his Chan doctrine. Chan was how Zen was called in China. It became Zen, which was the Japanification of the word Chan, which was the Chineseification of jhana, which was meditation in Sanskrit. So that's where we get Zen. His Chan doctrine in the Dharma cave on Jinshan Mountain. Each new generation that received the doctrine flourished and raised our sect to new heights of accomplishments. Sadly, this great tradition has dwindled. You know, it's almost in every generation. We have the appalling sense that the tradition of Zen has dwindled. When you look at it's always, I think, a very humbling thing to look at one's ancestors and say, how could I ever match what they did? So we always have this sense like, no matter what we've managed to gain or accomplish, it's minuscule compared to what our ancestors in the past did. It's a kind of humble thing, but you hear that, you hear that in Japan, you hear that in America. Sadly, this great tradition has dwindled. Hakuin felt that very strongly. And it's one of the things that really motivated him to a very deep, deep realization that allowed him to revitalize Rinzai Zen. So in any case, the pathway to the Dharma cave has become overgrown with weeds. It's hidden now from view. And that's certainly, a complex issue going on in our time as well. Many people are interested in Buddhism. It's almost part of the culture these days, but there are so many light forms of practice that are not about who am I really, not about realization practice, but are calm practice, mindfulness practices. In some way, we can say these are wonderful entrances if you need it. And that's certainly true. But the other side, from a perspective of a great teacher like Hanshan, the pathway to the Dharma cave, the real abyss of Zen, has become overgrown with weeds. It's getting hidden from view. You can go to so many sites on the internet. You can listen to so many podcasts. You can get tangled in so many weeds. How do you just give yourself to this practice of this great mystery of who am I? Now, all of those other things can be very useful in terms of increasing our faith and increasing our motivation to do the work of practice. And especially as lay people, we're not living in monasteries, we're not surrounded by Buddhist stuff. So all of those things, of course, judiciously used, can be terrifically encouraging and helpful. But again, from the perspective of a Hanshan, the pathway to the Dharma cave is getting overgrown with weeds. And we have to be judicious. Our time is short. How do we really find our way into that great mystery? Who am I? And make use of our own practice to enter there. Those who practice Chan must gather in the wilderness, far away from Da Hui's guidance, and without a teacher, they fall into error. Many think their first experience of enlightenment has brought them safely to the end of the struggle. That has been a perennial issue with Zen. Yes, there are moments of real realization, no kidding. Yeah, but then I've got it becomes the shadow side of that. People get stuck in I've got it. And they think, well, going through koans is just a matter of kind of matching up with what I've already got. Not at all. Not at all. And many think, oh, I've got it. Now all I have to do is, I can write books about it. I can talk about it. Instead of working on themselves, realizing even Shakyamuni is only halfway there. As someone who has written books, I can only tell you, it's a very painful process, and sticking your neck out is always asking for trouble. So, in any case, without a teacher, they fall into error. Many think that their first experience of enlightenment has brought them safely to the end of the struggle. This is, in a nutshell, why there are so many koans. It's just the beginning. And Aiken Roshi used to say, when you completely finished the koan curriculum, that's a good start. It's just a good start. He told me that Yamada Roshi, when he completed all his formal training, spent the rest of his life working on who's hearing. He took that as his personal entrance into the Dharma cave and kept at that the rest of his life. Having no master to correct this assumption, they persist in regarding the single experience as their crowning achievement. They will not remove their crown in order to bow to the Dharma. But a single experience is not a crown, it is a yoke. So dangerous is a little knowledge when it seduces the believer into burdensome ignorance. Truly it is said, it is easier to walk on thorny ground than to turn one's face away from moonlight. Once you've had some taste, it's so tantalizing to stick there and line up everything trying to recreate that or to judge it in terms of it. And that's natural. This is not a bad thing. But, Hanshan is applying flame to burn that attachment away so that we can enter freely into this very moment of a life just as it is, without being haunted by a memory of something that was once greater. The freedom to be completely as we are. Even Shakyamuni is only halfway there. What am I? Who am I? Those who achieve success by the lightning flash of chance can lay no claim to wisdom. And in fact, that's true. Many people have had awakening experiences. It's just without the tradition to help them nourish and develop that further, it becomes a fond and moving and wonderful memory. Unless there's some tradition that helps you to mature further along those lines of what was revealed in that single lightning flash. I just read a book I haven't looked at for many years. I reread it. It was by Frank Waters, a writer in the Southwest, who was one of the early Anglos to really understand the native culture of the Southwest. He wrote the Book of the Hopi, among other things, and The Man Who Killed the Deer, set in Taos, Pueblo, which has the very deep sense of the native tradition. But the book, Native Southwestern, which is the Americas going way back, very deep and rich tradition with a lot of connections with Zen and Buddhism, oddly, or oddly enough. You almost have to go back maybe to the Paleolithic to find the roots of people who came across from Asia into the Americas. How far back such traditions of awareness go and ceremonies, it's very hard to say. In any case, the book I read was The Woman at Autobiography Crossing. It's about it's a fictionalized version of an actual woman who had a deep awakening experience at a very stressful time in her life. She ran a little tea shop, an adobe kind of 1 or 2 room tea shop at the base of the mesa of Los Alamos. And up above, they were working on releasing the power of the atom. The first atomic bomb was being developed. And a lot of those people, Oppenheimer and such, would come down to her tea shop. And her experience was transformative, didn't just become a memory because she had a connection with some of the older native people of one of the pueblos, and they began kind of guiding her into that tradition to help her mature with her understanding. It was a very touching book, in some ways, I don't know, sentimental or fictionalized or something. But if you've never read The Woman at Otawi Crossing, you might pick it up and take a look because it gives you that traditional sense of how a single experience becomes the ground of maturing. And this has been going on in human cultures for a very long time. We're very fortunate we found our way into a living tradition today that helps us to mature in this way. So those who achieve success by the lightning flash of chance can lay no claim to wisdom. The insight gained becomes a toy, a trifle of shadows to be played with in memory. They cease to practice, finding no further need of it. In their leisure, they slip into worldly ways, calling others to follow, to correct their error, to warn them of danger, and encourage them to be steadfast in their pursuit of that true and distant goal. I have written the song of the placard carrier. Interesting introduction by Hanshan. He's saying also those who have some experience in Zen, who then think they have it and stop practicing and just think, I'll just take on an ordinary life. I know everything. I'm free now. I can do that. They find themselves overwhelmed by old conditions and mind states and really lose touch with the depth they'd experienced. So, the song of the placard carrier. Huckster, false advertiser, deceiver and deceived. That big placard carriers, I remember, I don't know if we saw it, it was probably from the time of the Depression. They'd hire guys to walk around with a cardboard, or wooden kind of front and back, like donuts, 5 cents, coffee, a dime at, Joe's Diner. And they'd, march along the street. That was advertising. So he's saying, huckster, false advertiser, deceiver and deceived. That big placard is so heavy in your arms, you can't think about anything but how you're going to keep on holding it up. You haven't even noticed how your ankles are shackled. You struggled towards a moment of clarity. But when you got there, you announced your arrival with a sign so big you couldn't see what else lay before you. So that other people can see your advertisement, you obstruct your own view. People get caught up, I guess, especially in Zen circles, how enlightened they are or something. That's you stick to your initial experience and think you've got it. The second half of our koan curriculum is really designed to remove that sense of I've got it, to lessen that I've got it hold on oneself. I remember talking to Aiken Roshi, and he said something about, he was referring to someone who was a serious practitioner, but he said to me, that person's a placard carrier. In other words, they have something, but they're stuck with it. They haven't been able to let it go. They're kind of trapped by it. It's kind of hard to, play ball, run around, pick up your kids, whatever, wearing sign advertising how enlightened you are. So Hanshan is pointing in that same direction. The blank side is all you can see. In its blankness, your imagination draws 1,000 things. You sketch a building and think you're walking towards a Deva palace, palace of the gods. You see lightning in a cloudless sky. Whether your eyes are opened or closed, you see nothing but illusion. Drop your sign. You're carrying on around a rotting toad. You can't sell fish eyes for pearls. That sign is a cank on your neck, like a prisoner wears a iron cank or a wooden cank. You're stuck in the stocks and you won't get anywhere until you free yourself from those confining bonds. Once free, you can follow a good road. The way is easy and as plain as level and level as a balanced scale. Don't stop at any sideshows and you'll enter the imperial city in no time at all. Don't stop at any sideshows. Yeah, so many interesting things along the way you can get caught up in. Don't stop in any sideshows. And you'll enter the imperial city in no time at all. The imperial city is where the emperor lives. Yeah. We know a little of that territory from, there was movement in the 90s, 80s and 90s, the archetypes of the king, the lover, the warrior, that the king, the emperor lives in the imperial city. What do you think that is? Where do you think that is? Move on, move on. Your legs will carry you. You don't need to be reborn as a horse, a camel, or a donkey. Yeah. Throw that heavy sign away. It's an unfurled sail that obeys the wind. You have to pull all your energy into controlling it, or put all your energy into controlling it. It's a huge mirror that reflects only worldly things. Drop it and shatter the great earth, the mountains, the rivers. In a broken piece, you'll find a reflection of your Buddha self. Then, when you look again, all the pieces will reflect the self, an image infinitely produced. Seek the infinite and turn your back towards the gate of death. It's a huge mirror that reflects only worldly things. Drop it and shatter the great earth, the mountains, and the rivers. In a broken piece, you'll find a reflection of your Buddha self. Then, when you look again, all the pieces will reflect the self, an image infinitely produced. The 72nd year, 1617 to 1618. That spring, in the first month, I went to Shongjing Mountain to pay my respects to the late master, Yun Qi. More than 1,000 monks and lay disciples were waiting for me when I arrived. All were so eager to learn about Chan that I was truly puzzled. I'd always regarded Master Yun Qi as an accomplished Chan master and wondered why his disciples should know so little about Chan. I then learned that he had confined his instructions to the methods of the Pure Land sect. What's that? The jewel is in the, what, how does that go, Rose?
Well, I don't know what it is in Chinese.
Yeah, Amitofu, when we were in China. repeating the name of the Buddha Amitabha, the Buddha Amida, Buddha of boundless light. Uh, one of the great teachers in Japan, might have even been Hakuin, said, Chan is like a battle between giants. Pure Land is like a battle between midgets. Uh, he wasn't being denigrating. It's different aspects. And of course, certainly in Pure Land with complete attention, uh, great depth has been realized by many people. But if you want to practice Chan, then practice Chan. And then he goes on to say, I suspected Pure Land might be, like today, a mindfulness um, kind of practice that gets people think they're practicing Zen, but they're really practicing mindfulness. Um, so I suspected that the reason he had done this was his fear that he would expose his disciples to the terrible dangers of incomplete enlightenment. In other words, they'd get stuck in all kinds of egotistic positions, thinking they'd accomplished something. Chan was in decline, and the few Chan masters who remained were all aware of this. They feared that once they departed this world, they would not be replaced by other masters who could lead their followers on to the true destination. When his disciples came to me enthusiastically asking question after question about the methods of our sect, I answered them fully, even though I was aware of the risk involved. Certainly, that's an issue that all teachers face. How much do you talk about things? How much do you say? Uh, who do you uh, give certain practices to? What would be most helpful to someone? Uh, there's always concern. You only grow by doing, and you only grow by sometimes making mistakes. And that's something we all know from growing up as human beings. And so there is a fear that all teachers carry to one extent or another. Even Hakuin regretted. I just read a thing recently. There was one person he felt he had just pushed them too hard and he should have explained more. And he regretted it. And so this is a very human document from Hanshan. It's quite interesting to see how much he's revealing. In any case, when his disciples came to me, I answered everything I could, even though I was aware of the risk involved. Then one evening, when they were all assembled, I told them what a fine Chan master their master had been, and how, no doubt, out of love for them, he had declined to expose them to the bitterness of failure. Well, it's one thing we certainly know from Zen practice is the bitterness of failure. If you're working on koans, you've gotten wrung out. Maybe you've gotten wrung out repetitively, even though you were sure you were onto something. Uh, uh, there's an introductory koan that it said that Dokton Roshi, who was Harada Roshi's teacher, koan teacher, Harada Roshi being the teacher of Yasutani Roshi, being then the teacher of Kapla Roshi and Aiken Roshi, both. It said he took 60 doksan to get clear on one of the introductory koans. Nobody, as far as I know yet, has beaten that record. 60 still stands. But imagine his pain. Pain. This is a guy who went on to become a great teacher, wrung out 60 times on this one little introductory koan. So take heart. We all know about failure, and that's the thing. Once you start, if you're doing koan practice, you're going to have to accept failure as part of it. Of course, Wu Men has a wonderful statement. The failure is wonderful indeed. You might want to write that out and paste it up over your laptop or something, or put it on the fridge. The failure is wonderful indeed. Gee, that would be a great bumper sticker to sell to Zen students. In any case, do keep it in mind because that's what we're all in for. So what a great master their master had been, who no doubt out of love for them had declined to expose them to the bitterness of failure. Many were moved to tears to learn this. Master Yunki had given them no hint that he had personally achieved so much. After spending 3 weeks with Master Yunki's disciples, I traveled to Jingxi Temple in order to lecture on Mahayana precepts, that is, the precepts, the 16 Bodhisattva precepts. Thousands of people attended these lectures, and it was deeply gratifying to see so many virtuous people gather by the lakeside to learn about the Dharma. When you think about our own time, how important it is for virtuous people to gather. We're seeing such an attack on virtue by people who claim to own virtue. It's terribly sad. So how gratifying indeed it must have been to see so many virtuous people gather by the lakeside to learn about the Dharma. I then journeyed to several beautiful places, Lingyin, Sanchu, and Shan, where I was pleased to observe the fish freeing service. In order to demonstrate their consideration for all living things, the Buddhists there would purchase fish that had been caught and liberate them during their ceremony. One of the great things that Roshi Kapleau instituted is when we had country land or out at Chapin, before it was even purchased, when it was still Ralph Chapin's place that we'd have picnics at and such. There was a ceremony of buying various animals, fish and frogs and maybe birds that might have been destined for meals, and releasing them onto the ponds and lakes and forests and such. And it was an animal releasing ceremony which had a very deep roots in Chinese Zen, which reminds me, when we were visiting our son and daughter-in-law and grandson up in California, we went to one of our son's favorite restaurants. It's a place you can only take out. There's actually two of them. It's called Enjoy. And it's a Chinese vegetarian restaurant. There's a sit-down version in Chinatown in San Francisco, and the takeout version that was a little closer to them. I think the takeout version was the older place. You always saw Chinese Buddhist monks and nuns and their followers getting food there. They served vegetarian food that was out of Chinese tradition, was mock pork and mock fish and mock beef, and but it was all seitan and vegetables. It was a very old tradition in China to make vegetarian meals that would be like meat to help people transition to vegetarian living. Also, monks and nuns ate there and ate their food, which was excellent, by the way, because they put no garlic and onions in their food, and that was something that was felt to be raising passions, kinds of vegetables that would raise passions and fire up the blood. So it was an old Chinese Buddhist tradition not to eat garlic or onions. Of course, Roshi Kapleau, doing his research into healthy vegetarianism, discovered that garlic was very important to one's health. So he would kind of include that in his meals, which was not traditional. Anyway, after the fish freeing, in the 5th month, I arrived at Wuhu. The officer Li Yu Shu invited me to stay with him so we could discuss some remarkable dreams he had been having. When I returned to Quanshan, I found that Prefect Wang had already given money for the construction of a vihara. Vihara is a place of practice, really, an abode of practice, where calm and peaceful practice can take place. I therefore instructed my disciple Fushan to supervise the construction. The building was completed by the end of the 10th month, and thus I had both a dwelling and a suitable place for giving lectures. My first topic was the Shurangama Sutra, the 73rd year, 1618 to 1619. This year I devoted myself to the task of repairing the Buddha Shrine Hall and the Chan Hall. In the 3rd month, Counselor Chen Chi-shi of Fuliang came to the mountain and with the help of Bao Zhangsu formed a committee of 10 friends to raise the necessary funds. In the 12th month of that winter, the repairs were finally completed. And now the 74th year, which is where we'll probably end, 1619 to 1620. That spring, in the 1st month, I started reciting the Avatamsaka Sutra. Each time I recited it, I found more to admire. But while I favored this instructive sutra, others, including my disciples, found it too long. Oh, sounds familiar. That's a good book, but man, it's really a thick book. Don't you have a thinner one? Yeah, I complied with their requests to lecture on my commentary on the Lotus Sutra, the Shurangama Sutra, the Awakening of Faith, the Diamond Sutra, the Sutra of Complete Enlightenment, and the Vijnaptimatra Siddhi Shastra. Still, I regretted that no one ever requested the Avatamsaka Sutra. There's little wonderful personal statement from Hanshan. Yeah, it was great to comment on all those sutras, but I was a little sad they never asked for the Avatamsaka Sutra, which I really loved. So, in autumn, in the 7th month, I made the necessary arrangements to create a home for wandering monks who had reached the age of retirement. I remembered the time when I was a boy. Maybe you remember that beginning of his autobiography. And several of these monks had called at my home looking for a meal. My mother had treated them so reverently when she gave them food, and I had been inspired by their holiness. I had often wondered what these monks, who were not attached to any monastery, would do when they became too old to go about begging for sustenance. Now, I could give them a place to live. So, just to be one more paragraph here, but just to keep in mind, he always saw things that needed doing that would benefit others, and he did them. This too is a reminder of what our practice is about. And I think it's a wonderful and very fundamental reminder. There are things that we see we can do to make this world a better place, not just for ourselves, but for others, then we should try our best to do it. This is something we can all take to heart. On the 15th day of the 8th month, I went into seclusion in order to meditate. In other words, he gave himself a sesshin, stopped all his involvement with things and focused completely on his practice. Following the method of Dharma Master Hui Huan, I used incense sticks to measure time. In other words, the stick burns for half an hour, a round has taken place. And concentrated on repeating the Buddha's name in the manner of the Pure Land school. So that's interesting. But no matter how I tried to keep my mind on the Buddha's name, my mind would become filled with worry. This is great Hanshan about the fate of the Avatamsaka Sutra. Everyone complained that Dharma Master Qingliang's commentary was too difficult to understand, and that the sutra's complexity and length made its profound meaning impossible to find. I resolved, therefore, to write a condensed commentary entitled The Essentials of the Avatamsaka Sutra, in which I would present a general idea of the sutra's meaning. This would help readers to understand and appreciate the sutra. During my seclusion, I began the outline of this work. And certainly, that is the motivation that I think anyone who's writing about Buddhism I know my motivation is that you try and write something that would make things a bit more accessible to people, given what you might understand about the difficulties facing people in our time, in our world. That certainly was the foundation of my writing, The Zen Life or Zen Life of Buddha, to show how Zen and the life of the Buddha really connect, to make that point clear. So we'll stop here, and next time we'll take up the 75th year, 1620 to 1621.